Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started to respect everybody's time. Thank you so much for joining the call today. My name is Mabel Naguja, and I'm the president of UG Link. We are a nonprofit organization focused on empowering communities by providing accessible resources in the diaspora. Today's session is especially important. We created this session to provide clear, reliable information around immigration and interactions with ICE. This is a stressful time, and we understand a lot is going on in our country right now. So this is very sensitive, and we encourage you to please put your name, take your video off, and make sure you rename yourself. We're trying to keep this as confidential as possible. This is a recorded session as well, and it's on a Zoom platform. So please be mindful of the questions that you do ask. We want to make sure we respect everyone and they are comfortable and there is privacy. We do encourage you to utilize the chat for any question that comes to mind at any time so we can make sure we get to them in a reasonable time. We are also honored to be here with incredible professionals who are doing this work every day and advocating for our communities. They'll be guiding us through today's session and discussion and answering any questions that you may have. Thank you again for being here. I will now hand it over to my Vice President, Hilda.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us on this Zoom call today. My name again is Hilda. I am Vice President of Uganda Link, and I have the pleasure of introducing our first speaker today. That is Erica Baganza. She is the policy manager at the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, leading state and local advocacy as well as political education. Formerly with the U.S. House of Foreign Affairs Committee as a staff associate for the subcommittee on Africa, Global Health, and Global Human Rights at the Suffolk County District Office in Boston. As a witness, as a victim witness advocate, she brings so much expertise in foreign policy, criminal justice, as well as trauma-enforced advocacy. Erica currently holds degrees from the University of New Haven as well as George Washington University. And again, we are so grateful to have you here with us today, Erica.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. As I said, my name is Erica Baganza, and I'm here on behalf, in my professional capacity. Some of you might know me personally, but it's a joy to be able to join you in my professional capacity, representing my job where I work, which is the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, known as BAJI. And just a little bit about Baji. Baji was founded in 2006, so we're coming up on our 20-year anniversary this year, and we are a national abolitionist organization. And we work at the intersection of immigration and racial justice, fighting for the rights of not only Black immigrants, but also African Americans. And so, in terms of grounding this conversation and kind of what I want us to talk about is something that when folks talk about immigration or when we hear people talk about immigration, it's not really framed as such, but it very much is and that is that immigration is a Black issue. When they talk about immigration, they don't show us. They don't show African migrants. They don't show Caribbean migrants. They don't show Black people. It's usually just brown people. And while, yes, we know that they are also part of the immigrant population, we also have our own immigrant story here too. So again, immigration is a Black issue. It is a racial justice issue. And to give you some stats to again further ground us in this conversation, in case you didn't know, in Maryland, there are over 2,600 and no, 267,300 Black immigrants. So we make up about 4.3% of the state's total population. And in Maryland, it is home to the fourth largest share of African immigrants in this country. So like our Black American siblings, right? Black immigrants are criminalized by the U.S. carceral states. 76% of Black immigrants who are deported on the grounds of contact with the police. So it is really it is important now more than ever that we address historical criminalization experienced by African Americans in the US. And it is the same system that is oppressing us as Black immigrants. Okay. And so part of that acknowledgement and looking into the history of what happened with Black Americans, it's also happening to us. If we look at the history, we can look at the enslavement of Black folks, we can look at Jim Crow, we can look at the draw on drugs. There's a historical thread there. And these are the same tools being used today to criminalize us. So look at racial profiling, militarized gear, mass agents, violent raids. And this is all in order to maintain a system of white supremacy, even though racism is never really acknowledged. And once someone is branded, a Black person is branded a criminal, it makes it that much easier to arrest us, to convict us, imprison us, deport us, and even kill us. So we must realize that immigration enforcement, right? What they're calling immigration enforcement, that is the system, it is the method that they are using to expand the police state. The system, the immigration system is not separate from the criminal system, and the lines between the cops and ICE and Custom Border Patrol, those have all been dissolved. Examples of that are joint task forces, our data being shared, jail transfers, and federal and local collaboration between federal law enforcement and local law enforcement. And we can look at something that's called a 287G contract, even though recently, thank goodness, Westmore just signed into law the banning of those contracts, which is our local and state law enforcement collaborating with the federal immigration law enforcement. So I just wanted to give that grounding before we get into kind of the preparedness. So all of that sounds terrible. So what do we do? What are some things that we can do personally in our families and also with each other in community? So what should I be doing to be prepared? Have your documents ready and accessible. Keep your identifying information and your financial information in a safe location. Gather documents showing the length of time that you have been here in the United States. The most recent probably will do. So the past 2 years is what's most important. So these documentations can include your income tax return, utility bills, leases, school records, medical records, bank records, and other documentation. And I know I'm saying this, you might be on the call thinking, okay, well, what does this have to do with me, right? I might not be an immigrant, or, I might have been born here, therefore that makes me a US citizen. Well, as we've seen, immigrants are not the only people being impacted by this current administration and the way that they are going about things. We can look to, there are countless folks that have been brought up, but I guess the most probably famous and one you can recognize, Alex Preddy, and I believe her name is Rachel Good in Minnesota. So again, this is for everybody. Everybody should be following these recommendations. So again, gather your documents showing the length of time you've been here in the US. Make sure whoever your emergency contact is, make sure that person can access all these documents because it's amazing to have all these documents prepared and it's amazing to know who your emergency contact is. But if that person cannot get to those documents, it's kind of a moot point. If you have children, you can draft what is called an emergency contact form. Parents, as we've been seeing in the news, or maybe you've heard, parents can be apprehended by ICE unexpectedly. So it is a good idea to create emergency contact forms so that all the important family plan information to care for your children or child is in one place. You should include the names of your name as the parent, a relative or friend who you want to use as the caretaker or the emergency contact, and also include that person's phone number, their email address if they have one, and a street address if that is available. Any person listed on this contact form, emergency contact form, should know about your caretaker plans for your child in the event you are picked up by ICE. So, preparing this form, maybe you've put down Auntie so-and-so to take care of your child, but you never told Auntie so-and-so that they're going to be a caretaker for your child. Make sure that when in preparation for this form, you are also having that conversation with the person that you wish to make that emergency contact. People to know. Again, identify the person or persons who will be your point of contact. Know that person's phone number. We are in the age where we've forgotten how to memorize phone numbers. We just click a button and you're able to call whoever. We have to get in the habit, at least memorize one phone number, and that phone number should be your emergency contact person. If you have an immigration attorney, know that person's number as well. Know how to contact them. Identify an organization or a collective group of people who can assist you and or your family. It's time to get in community. This is not the time to isolate. This is the time for us to come together. So organizations like the one I work for, Baji, I know that CASA has a big presence in Maryland, and there are other organizations that are doing lots of work in the Maryland, DC, and Virginia area. So it's time to start getting in contact with those folks. Back to family planning and parental rights. So even though the government may try to deport you, you still have the right to make a decision for your children, whether or not your children are US citizens. You must always advocate strongly for yourself as their parent. So again, starting now, gathering information, being prepared for the worst of circumstances. For example, you can keep copies of the birth certificates for your children, evidence that your children have lawful status in the US, your children's school and medical records. Any records, again, showing that you've been living in the US for X amount of time, taxes, bills, rental agreements. Identifying a caretaker, discussing that plan with said caretaker. Also discussing how long they might be the caretaker. Immigration and family court cases can take months or years. It's not really a quick process. I know we've come accustomed to Law and Order where cases are solved in an hour. That is just not the reality. These things take time. And how much it might cost to take care of your children. Discuss financial costs of caring for your children, including their food, their shelter, medical care, personal items. Finally, you should make it official. A financial power of attorney, FPOA, it is a document that gives another person temporary power to make decisions about your family and property. Financial power of attorney, FPOA, it is an agreement between you and another trusted adult. It is not a court order. You do have the power to cancel an FPOA at any time, and different states have different forms used to create an FPOA. But creating this document makes sure that someone you trust can access your bank accounts and other property. They can make sure that your rent gets paid. Your children have the money that they need to pay for basic care, and any other financial obligations are met in the event that you are detained. So that's that on things that you should know. Finally, stay informed. The news is scary. I'm not even going to lie to you. The news is scary and it is overwhelming. However, ignoring it right now is not going to change anything. Being informed helps you be prepared. And quite honestly, you cannot prepare for what you are unaware of. Personally, I ask my friends, my family, people that I talk to on a regular to commit at least 30 minutes of news a day, minimum. 15 minutes of local news and 15 minutes of national news. And if you're really good at it, you can fit in some international news as well, because we know things on the international front right now are also looking crazy. Also, I know our people love a good WhatsApp chat. They love a good chain email. But I beg of you, before you share an email, before you send that WhatsApp message or a social media link, do a quick fact check. Whether that's going online and seeing whatever it is that you've received in your inbox or to your phone is actually the truth. right? AI is becoming a big thing right now, and it's getting harder and harder to tell what is facts and what is false and what is someone exaggerating the truth. So doing a quick fact check. Or if you know that one person in your life that's usually on top of things, send it to them first. Like, hey, I received this. Do you think that this is true? Before you mass text it to the whole community and people at home and people abroad. And now everybody knows this thing, but the thing is actually not true. So please, there is too much at stake for us to be sharing improper information. And finally, going to the theme of our evening, knowing our rights, and what Baji we like to call freedom mantras as well. So what are your rights? Do not run if you encounter ICE or even police. These same rules and rights do apply if you're encountering local or state police. Do not run, do not resist. And that can be hard. You might be scared, but please do not run, do not resist. Remain calm. You can use your phone to take photos or notes about the stop if that is possible. Um, you have the right to remain silent. So if you are approached and they're asking questions like your name, you can state your name. Am I free to go? Your goal is really to spend as little time as possible in this encounter. So ask, am I free to go? If the officer says yes, state, I don't want to answer any questions, and you can slowly walk away. Do not voluntarily share any documents or details about your immigration status, as this can be used against you. If you ask, am I free to go? And the officer says no, in that moment, you can say, I want to exercise my right to remain silent, and I would like to speak to my attorney. Again, as little of an interaction with these folks as possible. Something you may not know, law enforcement is legally allowed to lie to you. You cannot lie to them, but they can lie to you to get whatever information it is that they are seeking. And so you want to say as little as possible. Do not lie, do not show false documents. You have the right to not be searched. If officers start to search your pockets or belongings, you can say, I do not consent to a search. Do not let officers into your home. If officers claim to have a warrant signed by a judge, you can ask them to see it. If you're at home, you can ask them to pass it underneath the door, or you can ask them to post it up on a window if that is available to you. And you should be looking, inspecting that warrant, making sure everything is correct, like the spelling of your name, like the address that they say that they are here to search, that it is actually signed by a judge, that is a judicial warrant instead of signed by a immigration officer, which is an administrative warrant. You have the right to make a local phone call. Again, going back to it's important to knowing at least one number by heart, because I'm pretty sure at that point you won't have access to your phone. So knowing one number by heart, again, preferably someone that is in your emergency plan. You have the right to not sign anything you do not understand. Consult an attorney before signing any legal documents. Please, please, please. So, going over our freedom mantras. Am I free to go? Again, the goal is to spend as little time as possible with the police or with this interaction. I don't want to talk to you, meaning you have the right to remain silent. Share whatever you share can and will be used against you. I want my attorney. You have a right to counsel. Also, keep in mind that attorneys do not magically appear. I'm sure Cassandra can tell us a bit more about that. It does take some time, so it's going to take some grit on your end to remain silent and just say, I don't want to speak to you. I want to speak to my lawyer. I do not consent. That asserts your rights to not be searched if the stop is legal. And again, do not run, do not resist. So that is just a few of how Baji likes to explain how this immigration enforcement context is and sharing our know your rights. We do have an actual attorney here. I'm going to pass to Hilda to give y'all her bio and her expertise, and we're going to get into a bit of Q&A.
Thank you so much for all of your information, Erica. And very quickly, we're going to go ahead and move into our immigration attorney. So we have been joined by Cassandra Nwankwo, who has been practicing immigration law for about 15 years, bringing both professional expertise as well as personal insight into her work. With family roots in Nigeria and being married to a Ghanaian, she possesses a deep firsthand understanding of the immigration experience. She is the founding attorney of Greater Hope Law Firm, an immigration law firm that is dedicated to establishing individuals here in the U.S. and bringing their families together. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to Attorney Cassandra. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you all for having me. This is such a great organization. And first and foremost, I want to say, Erica, that was really, really excellent. You covered a lot of the things I was going to say, so that's how I know it was well put together and well conveyed to everyone. So kudos there. There are just a few things that I'd like to add, and everything that Erica said was spot on, right on point. I do want to add, just in case you or your family member gets detained. So let's say you have a family member that, like she said, you're going to ask, am I free to go, or am I being detained, or am I being arrested? Now, if it escalates and now you are actually detained, or your family member is detained by ICE, what you want to do is you or your attorney can ask for a bond hearing. Okay, so that is something that you are entitled to. And basically, let me preface this with, I'm giving general information, right? So everything is worked on or seen on a case by case basis. So different facts, different outcomes, okay? But generally, because you have other facts that will make it a mandatory detention, and in that case, you aren't entitled to a bond hearing. But generally speaking, you would be entitled to a bond hearing, provided you don't have some aggravated felonies and other factors that would negate that. But generally speaking, you are entitled to a bond hearing, so you or your attorney can request for that. Okay. Now, let's say you have a loved one or a family member, a friend that has been detained. Like Erica was saying, you want to have that backup plan. You should have their information, because there is a link that it's a detainee locator link. Okay. You can Google it and just put detainee locator, and you will be able to find that. And you would either need the person's A number, and not everyone has an alien number. So if they do not have an alien number, or even if they do and you don't know it, you need basic biographic information: first name, last name, date of birth. So you would put that in, and you would be able to locate that individual. Now, granted, it may take some time because everything is processing, and we do see how USCIS tends to process things. So that being said, it may take some time. But as Erica stated, if you are being detained by ICE, you are entitled to a phone call. Now, as to when that phone call comes, it just depends on the facts of your individual case. But you will. So whether it comes, I've had clients that, as they were being detained, they contacted me within 20 minutes of their detention. And then I'd have clients that they didn't exercise their right to remain silent. So they ended up having a conversation with ICE agents, and that caused them to contact me almost 2 hours after, because they might have said something that incriminated themselves, or they might have given too much information. And as Erica said, you want to speak as little as possible. I will say, and I believe she hinted this as well, you don't ever want to sign anything, because you may believe you understand it, but in actuality, there are some, we like to call it legalese. So there's some lingo in there that even the most educated person may believe they understand it and they don't. And you can be signing away your rights to different forms of relief. Or it has happened where permanent residents have given up their permanent residency when they flew back into the country and they were asked certain questions because maybe they stayed out longer than a year and they signed that document and they didn't know they were signing away their permanent residency. So that's just an example. So you do have the right to remain silent, and that is what, if you believe that there may be something in your history or something that you know may not be favorable to you when stopped by an ICE agent, as Erica said, I would definitely exercise that right to remain silent. Um, and I do want to say, she did say that you want to stay calm and comply. And I agree with that 100% because in this day and age, we see so many people, I know my rights, I know my rights, I know you can't do this, I know you can't do that. As she said, state clearly, I would like to exercise my right to remain silent. I would like to speak with my attorney. You can state it, but we have seen cases where ICE agents haven't quite followed that, okay? But at least it's documented that you stated it. And that's what you want to do when you start wanting to go back and forth with them, even though there are laws out there to protect you. We have seen cases where, in actuality, that doesn't happen. So remaining calm and trying to comply with them as best as you can is definitely favorable to you, generally speaking, okay? So that is something that I did want to touch on. She talked about documents that you should have all on point. I'm just going to go a bit deeper, break it down by categories. So in general, valid government ID, and if you have a driver's license, you want to have that, okay? Now, if you don't have, and you can have a driver's license even without being a permanent resident or a US citizen. Some states will give you one even undocumented. So you would definitely want to have your driver's license on you if you do have that, okay? If you are a green card holder, you are required to have a copy of your green card on you. You're required to. A lot of people don't know that because they think they're permanent residents, so they can just say I'm green card holder, but it's actually a requirement by law to have proof of your permanent residency. Now, as a US citizen, you are not required to have proof of your citizenship status. However, in this day and age, we are telling everyone, if you're a US citizen, you don't have to carry your actual, if you are naturalized, you don't have to carry your actual naturalization certificate. If you were born here, you don't have to actually carry your birth certificate, but carry a copy of those documentations because it makes it easier when you're explaining to ICE officers when you're being stopped. So yes, it's not a requirement, but however, you want to be prepared, and those are some good points that Erica stated. Preparation, because we see what's happening in this day and age. Okay, so yes, U.S. citizens, you're not required to, but we definitely encourage and recommend you to have copies of your citizenship status with you. Okay. Now, if you are an international student, we are looking for you to have a copy of your I-94, and that is your record that shows how good your visa is for. That also, it shows a record of your entry and exit, but mainly your entry. So it shows, for instance, Cassandra Wonkwo is here on an F1 student visa, and she's admitted unto D/S, which means duration of stay. So that means that as long as I'm a student attending school full time and meeting all the necessary requirements of my program, I can be in the US. So that's when you see that duration of stay, which is the D/S. So you want to carry a copy of your I-94 record, okay? And then some sort of documentation regarding your status as a student, okay? All right, so those are things I will tell you to carry. The last thing I was going to say, but Erica covered it perfectly, so I'm not going to drill it, is having records about your residency here for at least the past 2 years. Okay, so and she hit all those points, so I'm not going to drill that into you all's mind. And that is what I would add on to that. If you are detained, there are several forms of relief. It just depends. And like I said, that's on a case by case basis. Sometimes people never had documentation to begin with, but there is something called cancellation of removal, and that is a form of relief if you are in removal proceedings. Okay. And that will give you permanent residency status. Okay. But that's not something you apply for affirmatively. So you have to be in removal proceedings. So that's just an example. And there's still asylum. So right now there's a pause on affirmative asylum. So the difference between affirmative asylum and defensive asylum is affirmative asylum, you have entered the country and you are saying you have a well-rounded fear of persecution based on the 5 enumerated grounds, okay? And you are proactively filing an asylum application, okay? Now, there is a pause on that one right now. However, defensive asylum, that is the one that once you're in removal proceedings, you can use that as a form of relief. So those are still going through. And it just depends. There are several other forms of relief should you get an NTA. So an NTA is a notice to appear. Basically, that is immigration initiating removal proceedings against you. Okay, so you receive an NTA, it'll state the pleadings, it'll state it'll state facts about you, how you came in, all the information. It's pretty straightforward. So typically, it's about 4 or 5 lines, and they list them by number. Okay, it'll let you know your court date. It'll let you know basically what they are saying you are guilty of. Okay, so you have the opportunity to explain to them why you should not be removed from the US. And that's when I'm talking about forms of relief. Okay. So, for instance, if you have a US citizen family member or permanent resident family member, and they're able to petition for you, and like I said, it depends on the facts of your case. Okay. So, let's say you're married to a US citizen, and there aren't any criminal offenses, okay? Like Erica said, immigration does go hand in hand with the criminal system as well. So let's just say, generally speaking, you don't have any crimes. You've been married to a U.S. citizen for, let's say, a year now, and it doesn't have to be a year. It could have been yesterday, okay? But it depends, though, because if you came in with a visitor's visa or you came in with a student visa, so basically you came in with a non-immigrant visa, meaning you had the intent to come to the U.S. for a specific purpose and a specific duration of time and return back to your home, okay? So if you came in with a non-immigrant visa, that's a non-immigrant visa. If you marry within 90 days, and it's not an official statement, but if you marry within 90 days, there is this presumption that your intent of coming in was to marry and not for whatever program or whatever visitation or whatever student status that you claimed. And then if they can get you on your intent, even if you do marry and have 12 children, if they can get you on your initial intent when you came in, you won't be able to adjust status. Okay. And I'm sure there might be questions about that because everything kind of links in. So I'm dropping information here, here, and here in all these categories, but they all kind of link in. So if you guys have any more questions related to what I've stated or would like more details, we can go down that route as well. But so with the NTA, with the removal proceedings, there are definitely forms of relief that you are entitled to. But when I say entitled, it means as long as you're able to prove all of the elements of what is necessary to file those forms of relief, then you are afforded the opportunity to do so. If you're in removal, an immigration judge will have the final say on whether they believe what you are purporting is actually factual. Okay. So they will make their decision. So they have the discretion on that. Okay. And I think that is pretty much the main things that I wanted to convey to you all. And if you all have any questions, let me know.
Thank you so much for that. Please ask your questions. I will have Cassandra's information here in the chat. so you can reach out to her if they are more personal questions that we probably shouldn't put on this platform. I do encourage you to reach out for further information. However, I will now leave the floor for anyone who has a question that we may not have addressed. I know some came in, Cassandra and Erica, but you guys have pretty much answered a lot of them. But let me just kind of um, let people chime in if anyone has anything to say or ask at the moment. You can unmute yourself.
So one question that we did have come in prior is just a little bit, of course it is case by case, so we understand that. But one question that we had was, can people still be removed even if they have a green card? And can they be removed if they're in the waiting period for a green card, and what that entails?
I will go ahead and take that. Or Erica, did you want? Okay. Legally speaking, yes, you can. You can still be removed if you have a green card, and you can still be removed if you are in the process of obtaining a green card. I'm going to start out with the process of obtaining a green card. While you are processing a green card, you are still in the process. So you don't have any rights that someone with a green card has already. You don't possess those rights of a green card holder. Okay. Yes, we have natural rights as humans, but those ones that are specific to a green card holder, you don't have that. However, if you are in removal proceedings, obtaining a green card, so let's say someone filed for you, they did I-130, I-485, they did the whole adjustment of status application, right? You do have that as a form of relief. So the judge, while you're there, your attorney, there'll be a judge and there'll be opposing counsel. That's what we call them, opposing counsel, but that's basically DHS's attorney. Will all be there, and not at your master calendar hearing, your individual calendar hearing. So the master calendar hearing is the first one you get. That's when you're coming in and they're asking questions. They're basically having you admit or deny, and your attorney will do it for you, the information that they put on the NTA. That's all they're doing at the master, okay? So you're going through the pleadings via your attorney if you have one, okay? If not, then you will admit. For instance, Cassandra Wanko was born January 12th, 2026. I admit, so you go line by line for that, right? And then at the end, you or your attorney would say, this is the form of relief that I present the court with. And then you can say that you are in the process of obtaining your adjustment of status. So they can either dismiss that and allow that process to continue with USCIS, or they can schedule an individual hearing, which is your next one, where everything will be adjudicated and everything will be done right then and there in court, but that you'll have some time to prepare. And I've been there with a couple of my clients where it was a marriage-based adjustment of status, and that was his form of relief. So right then and there, I had to bring in the family, husband, the spouse, husband and wife were there. I had to already pre-submit facts to show that it was a good faith marriage, meaning that it was not just entered for the purposes of an immigration benefit. And then the judge would ask questions. The opposing counsel, DHS's attorney, will ask questions that were similar to being at an interview. And you want to make sure that everyone is on the same page, because they will go ahead and do it then and there. And then they can decide either through the courts, or they can dismiss it and have it decided by USCIS. So that is a form of relief. And depending on, and without getting too much into the weeds, depending on if your case is a mandatory detention case or if it's one that it's not, then you would ask for bond first before going through that whole process of appearing for your case and what have you, because that can be a long process, and no one can give you the exact time. Okay, there's a reasonable time, but I've had someone that we applied for defensive asylum, and it wasn't adjudicated until 3 years later. Okay, so. Now, with the other one, you said, can you be detained as a permanent resident? Yes, you can. So let's say you're a permanent resident, and this is where that criminal part comes into play. If you are a permanent resident and I mean, there are many different factors, right? But mainly you see it a lot happen when there's a criminal component to it. So let's say you had certain drugs on you, and even though it was in state court, right? Some states even make marijuana legal. However, federally, it is still illegal. So if you have certain narcotics, okay, and they see that on your record, you have whether it's a conviction or not, they see that they can detain you because everybody has this misconception because you hear legal permanent residency. It is actually not permanent. If you do certain crimes, you can be removed from the country. Okay. Um, I've had several clients that were permanent residents, but they they had a certain amount of marijuana on them. Immediately their permanent residency was stripped for them. But luckily they had an asylum claim. So they were able to get back in through asylum. But even though they've been a permanent resident for, I think they were like 30 years old and they've been a permanent resident since they were 15. It doesn't matter. Certain crimes will strip you of your permanent residency. Domestic violence is another one. Any kind of child sexual assault is another one. So there are so many crimes, and that's why I say I don't want to get too specific, but just because you are a permanent resident does not mean you cannot get detained. Another one we see is when you travel out, like let's say you want to visit your home country or visit another country, right? If you are planning to stay out for over a year, you need to file that re-entry permit because if not, they can deem that as an abandonment of your permanent residency. Okay, so they can detain you for a couple of hours, even a couple of days at the airport as a permanent resident when you're trying to come back because they figured you abandoned it. You've been out for 2 years in let's say Nigeria or Uganda. Why now? What are you saying? You want to come back? No, we're going to detain you. But you will get your day in court, but they can detain you for that. And typically and I've had clients for that too. But if you can show that you've been paying taxes that those 2 years while you were gone, if you can show that you were paying your mortgage while you were gone, there's a whole list of evidence that you can show to overcome abandonment of permanent residency. But if you do things that can show that you might have had the intent to abandon it, they can detain you. But you are definitely entitled to your day in court or whether they send you a letter to explain yourself or what have you. Okay. I
Thank you
hope
so
that
much
answered the
for
question.
that. And that actually leads into my next question. I don't know if it's simple or not, but is it possible for if you're a naturalized citizen, let's say you were born here in the States and you're a naturalized citizen, is it possible for your citizenship to be revoked?
Okay. That is a good question. Now, typically with citizenship, you have to give it up. The only way there are slim to none where it can be revoked is if you, let's say you are a terrorist against the United States. Now, if you are working with an agency to bring the United States down, you are terrorizing the United States, then of course, yes. But other than something so extreme like that, you have to, and you can't even do it on US soil. You have to go to an embassy or a consulate. If you like, you can go to Jamaica, you can go to Mexico, or you can fly back home. It doesn't matter, but you would go in there and you would let them know that you would like to renounce your US citizenship. Now, the only other way is if you somehow lied or did a misrepresentation of a material fact to obtain your citizenship, and they were to somehow go back into your history and see that you lied, then they can. Now, the odds of that happening is not is I know at one point they were saying that they wanted to do all of that, but there has to be something that triggers something like that. Because typically, let's say I've had clients that have come to me because when they flew in on their visitor's visa, they stated that they were married, but then when they were applying for their green card, they stated never married because they didn't even check off divorce. So now there's a discrepancy there. And they didn't catch that until now she applied for her naturalization, and they caught it because they typically catch it by the naturalization time. And what they did is they were trying to even remove, they weren't even, as for getting the naturalization citizenship to go through, that wasn't even an option. They're now trying to even revoke her green card, that she had been a green card permanent resident for about 19 years based on what she did there. So we were able to well, our strategy in that one was basically showing that she did a traditional marriage. And for the purpose of immigration, she was from Ghana, she did a traditional marriage. And for the purpose of immigration, they do recognize that as a marriage. So she was a bit confused. So she thought she was married. And then, you always have those friends that will say, oh, well, I was speaking to my friend or for this person. And I always tell people, when you come to me, I'm giving you the law. I really don't care in all humility what happened in your friend's case, what happened in your neighbor's case. We can only go by the law. So she took someone's advice, and then that's why she didn't check divorce. They told her, well, if it was a traditional marriage, then it didn't count. So she really did not have the intent to have a misrepresentation of a material fact. Okay, so we were able to show that even with that traditional marriage, in their case, there was a returning of the Bible, returning of the rings, all of that. It was more of a ceremonial thing that they did, and we were able to show that she never had any intent to basically defraud immigration. So that I like to give examples so it's easier to understand. But yes, and that brings me to this point, and I know Erica said something, don't lie. And exactly how she said, don't lie. Do not lie. Whether it's because you're being stopped by ICE, whether because you have removal proceedings, or even if nobody's disturbing you, you yourself are putting in an application, someone's filing for you, you're applying for asylum. It doesn't matter. Do not lie, because immigration, they have everything. They have everything. So sometimes I tell clients, if you are unsure what you put in your application when you were coming into the country, what you put in your application when you were filing for XYZ benefit or trying to establish yourself here, then you can always do a FOIA request, okay? And it will show you what you've put on previous applications on what ICE has, being that it's not redacted or anything like that, but generally speaking. So do not lie, because it may not catch you today, it may not catch you tomorrow. It caught my client 19 plus years later. So, and the issue, what I tell clients all the time is, you may know, like my friend applied it for, it was a marriage-based green card. I know they're really married. They go to my church together. I know them in and out. But when asking for documentation, and that's where I would say Erica was right on point as well, like document everything, keep all your documents together. When I'm asking for documentation, if you're not submitting a lot of documentation, I have a checklist. Based on the checklist, you don't have to have everything, but the more you submit, the better for your case. If you're not submitting that, they're not in your homes with you. They don't know whether something is true or false. So they can only go by documentation, and they see hundreds of thousands and millions of cases where there is some sort of, marriage-based green card application, but basically person A has hired person B. It's not real. It's not a good faith marriage. So there's that presumption already. The burden is on us to show that, look, this is a good faith marriage. So whether it's a marriage-based green card or green card through another way or naturalization or what have you, as Erica stated, you want to have your documentation in order. It should be easily accessible. Okay. Now, that brings me to something else. I know this is not a question, but it just dawned on me. If you do not have documentation, or a member of your family, your friend, it doesn't matter. If you're not here legally, please do not travel internationally. Please don't even travel via airport, domestic, on a domestic flight, international flight, domestic flight. You do not want to do that. Even if you have a form of relief, or if you have a pathway underway right now, if you can avoid it internationally, definitely. I wouldn't even say if or when, just don't do it. Excuse me. But domestic flights, you may think like, oh, well, I have this in process. Oh, sorry, I saw a note come up. I have an application in process or what have you. Please, they can detain you. If it's not necessary, go by car. yeah, you want to. So right now I'm in Virginia. Let's say I want to go to Myrtle Beach on a family trip, and it's a 6 hour flight. I mean, a 6 hour drive. I would definitely rather just hop on a plane for 45 minutes to an hour and be there. But is it really worth it? You have to look at your own status and determine if it's really worth it. And as of today, because of the shutdown, there aren't as many TSA individuals in the airport. So what happened is, as of today, ICE agents are in the airports. Okay. As of today, per our president, ICE agents were authorized and informed to go to the airports. And I've already seen cases in Atlanta, Sacramento, where they're there currently as we speak. And they have detained people. And it just started today, hot and fresh off the press. It just started today, and they're already detaining people. So if it's not necessary, definitely not internationally, but if it's not necessarily, I would encourage you to not fly domestically if you have any criminal case, whether you've been convicted or just charged. I wouldn't do it. That's if you're a permanent resident. Um, if you're a permanent resident and you don't have a criminal, I'm not talking about traffic violations, okay? I'm not talking about you ran a red light or you were speeding. I'm not talking about those ones. I'm talking about egregious cases. Or crimes against moral turpitude, okay? Those kinds of cases, as a permanent resident, I wouldn't travel right now internationally. If you have a conditional green card, and just to give you background information, conditional green card is when you have the 2 year green card versus the 10 year green card. The 2 year green card is what is given to you is when, like, for instance, you were married or you're married less than 2 years and you got your green card, they're going to give it to you for only 2 years, okay? Which means later down the line, which is actually 90 days, within the 90-day period of the expiration of your green card, you are required to remove conditions. One of the things when you're doing that application to remove the conditions, you have to still show that you're in a good faith marriage. So you include almost similar to the same type of evidence that you included to obtain your green card, okay? So that conditional green card, as it says, is conditional. So if it's processing, I wouldn't travel internationally unless you know everything is in order and there's nothing that could make them stop you. Because there have been people that on that conditional green card, they traveled, and for some reason when they applied to remove conditions with the I-751, USCIS did not believe that it was a good faith marriage, even though they got the green card to begin with. So guess what? They were detained. Okay. Because that adjudication came while they were on international travel, and they were only gone for about 2 weeks. But guess what? The decision came within that 2 weeks, so they were detained. And now we're looking at removal proceedings and having to get out of that, which can be time consuming, costly, and you can be detained for that time period. Okay. All righty.
Oh,
I know
wow.
I've
Thank
been
you
there.
so
I've
much.
been
I know
there.
you have to leave like in a minute ago.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm sure we have more questions. But put them in the chat. We'll do our best. If we need Cassandra, we'll figure out how to get them answered. But I did want to make sure that I let you know that she does have to leave soon. So if she hops off, she has to leave. But did you want to answer anything, Erica? Or
I did just want to, in terms of, folks that are born here and what risks that we may have, and I say we because that's me, I'm included in those. We are U.S. citizens based on what's called birthright citizenship, meaning anybody who is born on U.S. soil automatically gets U.S. citizenship. As of right now, that is still intact. However, it is being challenged in the court because of Trump's executive order last year when he came into office to get rid of that. And it would be in effect for any child born, I believe it's February 19th, 2025. It is still going through the courts. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear it. There was a lawsuit filed. And so that hearing, and actually, Baji, we are a part of that lawsuit, and that lawsuit and hearing is going to be heard April 1st. And the thing about birthright citizenship, just again, as Baji is that connector between uh, racial justice for both Black immigrants and African Americans. Birthright citizenship is a policy that was established to give formerly enslaved folks the right to be seen as human and citizens. As we know, folks that were brought here and enslaved here, Black people, were considered property. And when emancipation came, and they were no longer slaves by law, they were still not considered people. And so that is, it was an amendment that was passed, and that is why we have birthright citizenship. And so, folks think that birthright citizenship is going to only impact immigrants. It's actually going to impact a greater population, many, many more of us. You can keep tabs with us at Baji, and we'll give you the updates on where birthright citizenship is going to land. And then I did see a question in the chat regarding an attorney. My question is, if you get detained and request to speak to your lawyer, is this lawyer provided by the government, or are you responsible for getting your own lawyer in that moment? As Cassandra noted, and I also noted, the immigration system, although it is a civil matter, although it looks like the criminal legal system, dresses like the criminal legal system, talks like the criminal legal system, it is a civil matter. And guess what? That means that the rights you have to an attorney within the criminal legal system, meaning that the government will supply you an attorney, does not quite apply in the immigration system because it is a civil system. Many folks, unfortunately, do not have the resources to get their own attorneys and are forced to face the system alone. There is a bill in Congress that my organization and other organizations are trying to push for the right to representation, universal representation, which would give the right to all folks going through the immigration system, the right to an attorney provided by the government. It has not been passed yet. We're still trying to advocate and lobby for said law, but as it stands right now, you would have to get your own attorney. Cassandra, I don't know if there's anything that I left off of that you would want to add on.
No, that was perfect. I've gone to many removal proceedings, and it's sad. You will see only a handful of people have attorneys, and the rest, they are just there by themselves. And the sad part about it is sometimes they just needed a good attorney because they actually had a good case. But we are not allowed to solicit people while in the courtroom. But you listen to it, it's like, oh man, this person had a perfect case for asylum. And it was funny because that was somebody's case that they had when I was there. And funny enough, they ended up giving everyone from that country, it was Cameroon at the time, they don't have TPS anymore, but it ended in December 2025. But the person was from Cameroon and they had a perfect case for asylum. But later on, you don't even have, you didn't have, this was years ago, you didn't have to do an asylum application because they realized what was going on in Cameroon, and everyone was afforded the opportunity to apply for temporary protective status. So I was wondering about that person. I'm like, oh, but I'm sure if they're able to get in contact with someone who would be able to explain things to them, they would have realized that they have a perfect case from being removed. So you're right. You do have to, from immigration, from my experience, you have to bring your own attorney. But when you do get an NTA, they will list some places that would do pro bono work, but it's still up to you to contact them and see if they'll take your case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are organizations like mine. I mean, we don't have many attorneys on staff, but we do take some pro bono cases. So again, going back to my point that it's now time to get in community, not only within our own Ugandan community, but also with organizations and people that are out there doing the work and offering the resources in the event you need. Of course, we pray, right? You will never need this resource. But you gotta stay ready, get ready so you ain't gotta what? Be ready. So it's important to be informed and knowledgeable and just have that in your back pocket just in case. Um,
Before we continue, I just wanted to thank everyone. As Mabel said, I do have to drop off. This has been great. I hope all the great information that I shared, that Erica shared, was helpful as well. And Mabel did say she'll drop my information into the chat. And it was definitely an honor to be here with you all. I hope to come back again soon. But very nice. And Erica, awesome job. And UG Link, awesome. Keep doing what you all are doing. Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Cassandra.
Bye, everyone.
We are
Uh,
gonna stay on a little bit. If anybody still has anything, any questions, Erica can kind of address some here, as she's on the platform. I know that we had a few people that joined a little bit later. So if you have any other questions, we'll do our best.
yes.
So I did have one question that came in.
Go ahead.
We were talking about the do's and don'ts and how to be prepared for that initial contact when you're first approached by an ICE agent. But we were talking about maybe like the question is basically what do you do while you're in detainment? What are the do's and don'ts as you're waiting in that time, maybe for your court date, or you're waiting to hear from your attorney, or there can be so many things that are happening where you're actually sitting there in detainment for an extended period of time. So what are the do's and don'ts in that period?
Yeah, I think it would still be especially if you haven't touched base with your attorney yet or with an attorney, is to remain silent. Only answer what is absolutely necessary and nothing more, nothing less. Stick to yourself. And it's detention. We say detention, it's really prison. If we want to keep it real, calling it detention makes it sound like school detention when you used to get in trouble at school and you had to stay later, but it's really prison. Therefore it's not a fun time at all. And forcing yourself to be in isolation and not talking to anyone, and that can be very lonely, and will most definitely probably have an effect. But until you speak to an attorney, it is imperative, it is important that you do not divulge any more information than what is absolutely necessary. And again, don't lie either. So you want to just don't sign anything, don't say anything until you are able to make that one phone call, which you have the right to, that local call, and either call your emergency contact so that they can get an attorney to you or some resources to you ASAP, or that attorney, if that is the number that you memorized for yourself. Call that person and tell them, hey, I'm in this situation. I'm being held at this facility. If sometimes they don't even tell you where they're taking you. But if you are aware where you are and where you're being held, tell them that and have them guide you through what exactly you should and should not say.
Yeah. Question. Is there a way to kind of look up if you're in line to be picked or if your case is coming up to kind of prepare yourself?
Like if you have a case already?
Yeah.
Yes, that was probably a question better suited for Cassandra. I'm many things, but a lawyer I am not. But yes, there is a database, and a way to look you up. I think she mentioned it. They call it an alien ID, where you can look up your case and see where things stand. Again, I think that's a question better suited for an attorney. There are databases that they can go in and look somebody's case up and see kind of where they are. And then from there, you would be able to prepare if you have a hearing, if you have an interview, what have you.
Thank you. Do we have any other lingering questions?
I did just want to offer, Baji, we do have a monthly call that happens every fourth Friday. We call it the Black Migrant Ecosystem, or BME for short. We meet on a Zoom platform. It is a safe space for Black folks. You can be immigrant or born here. The only requirement is that you're Black. And we go over a lot of these things, a lot of these policies, a lot of things that are happening on the legal front. For example, what's happening with birthright citizenship, giving an update there. What's happening with this TSA stuff? Like, how is it that TSA is not getting paid, but ICE and Custom Border Patrol is getting paid? Well, that's a policy called the One Big Beautiful Bill, and they were given $85 billion to keep operating. And so these are the things that we kind of go into more detail. We curate a safe space for people to ask questions. And then we also talk about how to get active, how to get in community, in your own community or in nationally. Like I said, Baji is a national org, so we're spread out all over the country. So I can share those details with Mabel. We have one coming up this Thursday, actually. This Thursday. So again, you are more than welcome to join us once a month for those types of conversations. If that is something that interests you. Again, don't have to be an immigrant. You just gotta be Black. That's it. That's the only requirement.
Yes, that part. Thank you. Hilda has posted the detainee lookup link in
Thank you.
the chat. There's also Greater Hope Law Firm number, which is Cassandra's firm. If you need to ask her any questions, her number is there to reach out to her directly. I will share the information that Erica is going to share with me regarding the safe space, because Lord knows we all need one. And I really, truly thank you so much for being able to join this call. If there's any lingering questions that we do not answer, follow us on all our networks to be able to address those. We'll do our very best. And we'll be able to kind of connect you with the right people, the right circle. That is what we try to do here. That's exactly what we're here for. Before I lose everybody, I wanted to quickly mention the month of April is Financial Literacy Month. So we're gonna have every Wednesday in April, starting on the second week of April, we will have a webinar at 7:30 p.m. to get ourselves in that financial mindset so we can know better to do better. So I will also be sharing that information. You'll see it circulating on all our social medias and contacts. So be on the lookout for that. All right. Um, if you need to leave, I think we're good to go here.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna stay back here if anybody wants to kind of say anything, but thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate that.
Thanks, everyone. I'll
Have
be
a good
sending all
evening.
materials to Mabel to send out to everyone. So email coming your way.
Also, it's in the chat as well, and I will share. Thank you.
Bye.